things. Okay, you ready for our new series? Identity Crisis. I want to use the story of Moses, if I can, for just a few minutes today. And because Moses is a guy that you have to think about it. If you know the story of Moses, he's put into the river as a baby because the boys in Egypt were supposed to be killed. And if they weren't killed by the midwife, then Pharaoh said, I want you to just start throwing them into the Nile River. And Moses had a brave mother, and I guess father too, and they had this baby boy, and they defied Pharaoh, and they decided that they were going to hide little Moses. And so they hid him. You can imagine the terror. We've even seen movies like this, haven't you, where they're trying to keep a little baby quiet, and someone's there. And they had to keep Moses as quiet as they could for as long as they could, but that just doesn't last very long, as you know, with a little infant. And so think of this act of faith. The mother of Moses takes this baby, makes a little basket, seals it the best that she can with some tar, make it as waterproof as she can, puts her precious baby in there, and shoves it off into the Nile River. And this is all she could do to give her baby some kind of a chance at life. And as it turns out, the basket floats a little ways down the river, and coincidentally, Pharaoh's daughter is down there at the riverbanks. And she hears this baby, and the baby basket must have come into the reeds there and gotten caught up, coincidentally. And she comes down there, and she finds this baby, and she has compassion for this baby. And she said, this must be one of the Hebrew babies. The sister of Moses is kind of stealth following along the banks to see what happens to her little baby brother. The girls were allowed to live, the boys were not. And she sees Pharaoh's daughter grab the baby, and so she sees that she has compassion, and so she makes her way over to Pharaoh's daughter, and they have a conversation, and the sister says, you know, if you want someone to kind of nurse the baby along, because, you know, royalty, they don't, take care of menial tasks. And she says, basically, I can get someone to handle that for you. And miraculously, Moses is brought back to the mother, and the mother is able to nurse him longer, but then she has to give him back to Pharaoh to grow up in the house of Egypt. And Moses grows up, and all he could say is that perhaps he was a little confused about who he was. And our society today is just suffering for, whatever word to say, but I'll call it an identity crisis. You hear that phrase used all the time. And to be honest with you, there's all kinds of really, really completely nonsensical things that are being said and encouraged to people that are struggling to find themselves, especially the young. They should be the most protected from certain kinds of insanity. But it's human nature for all of us to kind of want to know who we are, what we're supposed to be doing, why God put us here. These are good and natural questions, but they have to be thought about, and they kind of have to be answered a bit. I remember reading the biography of Steve Jobs, and as brilliant, Steve Jobs, the reason that we all have this, okay, as brilliant and gifted as he was, the people that were with him early in his life said really what his drive was all about was he was trying to find himself because he was adopted. And it just drove him and drove him and drove him. Something deep down inside of us wants to know. You know, when Tommy was singing that song, there's a line that just really struck me, and it says, deep down I know. You know, that's just worth talking about for a minute. Because deep down there are some things that you know. You don't think about them all the time because life is busy and you're rushing here and you're rushing there. But there's some things that you know deep down. But if you're caught up in too much noise, you won't go deep. But when it's quiet, you know because it's deep down inside of you. Deep. Moses struggled, trying to figure out, who am I exactly? Now he's grown up in Pharaoh's household, and he sees, can you imagine this? He's Egyptian because he's the heir to Pharaoh. He's the next Pharaoh. He's been trained and schooled in the finest schools. But at his roots, we don't know what he knew. We don't know what he was told and not told. And people who helped adopt others have talked about this whole difficulty. When do you tell them? What do you tell them? How much do you tell them? But the struggle was real for him. Perhaps there were some things that he knew deep down if even he wasn't told. And it sort of comes to a head in Exodus chapter 2. It says he went out and he saw two Hebrews fighting. And he asked the one in the wrong, why are you hitting your fellow Hebrew? Why are you doing this? It bothered him. There was something that he knew deep down was not right about this. And the next verse, he says, who made you ruler and judge over us? Are you thinking of killing me as you killed the Egyptian? See, what happened was Moses had seen an Egyptian beating a Hebrew slave, and he couldn't take it anymore, so he just went out and he just murdered this Egyptian. And Moses didn't think anybody knew about it. But now he realized that the word was out. And so Moses is in this difficult spot. These guys come back at him and say, you're not our ruler, you're not our judge, you're not one of us. But now he's in trouble because the word spread and he killed an Egyptian, and Moses really has no options left. This is the thing. You would think someone like Moses, someone like Steve Jobs, you could think, you're so successful, you're so brilliant, you have all of this stuff. Moses, you have this entire, you have this entire world that is at your feet. That should be enough, but it's not. It's not enough. It's never enough. You have to know who you are. You have to know why you're here. You could say, Steve Jobs, you have the world by the tail. That's enough. It's like, it's not enough. You have to know who you are. You have to know why you're here. Every human being needs that. The reason, I'll put this out there, and you'll say, this is such a Homer answer. The reason we're having an identity crisis is because we're taking the Creator out of the mix. It is the natural result of what you do. When you subtract the idea that you were created and made in the image of God, that God put you here for a purpose, that has been subtly and slowly drained from the upbringing of our young. Now it's not cool anymore. Now, we have science. We don't need all that nonsense, all these kind of things, which I could talk about another day in depth. It sucked away the life. And now people are struggling because they don't know. You were made by God for a reason. In other words, may I simplify it? If there is no God or there is no Creator, you're just an accident. And if you're an accident, How important do you feel? You're just a coincidence. How valuable do you feel? So you have to go through your life trying to find and add value to yourself. You see, of course I'm going to say we need God, but my friend, think of another answer. Think of another thing that you could say that would give identity and meaning and purpose to people again. And I'm telling you, you can't find any. They don't exist. And so it just brings itself to a head where all of a sudden you have a crisis. Now, has the name of God been misused? Of course. Has the church done things that are wrong? Of course. You can go on and on about the excuse book. But my friends, how many times have I said it? You cannot throw out the baby with the bathwater. Get a strainer. Yeah, of course, there's bathwater. My friends, we need God. We need the idea and the understanding that people have to have a foundation, a firm foundation to put their feet on. And your understanding and your relationship with God will continue to grow and change as you mature. And I think the church needs to keep teaching about that. And I will do my best to contribute because I think that our understanding of God grows and evolves. And we're going to talk about Moses meeting God. That is huge. A lot of times, I was listening, Vicki and I were having a conversation the other day, and it was about a young man, a young adult who's told the reason that he's kind of not involved in church or whatever. And this is just so classic. It was something to do with something you heard. I guess I don't know the whole story, but heard something in college about the Bible. It had some version of God. And here, this is so important. Listen to this. What I got to say to that young crowd is, if you dug a little deeper, and that's on you. That's on you. I can't dig deeper for you. But you can't listen to the first person that comes by and showed you some thing that, was in the Bible that confused you a little bit or didn't make sense to you, and all of a sudden you go, all of this stuff is nonsense. You just got to dig a little bit deeper. Because I said, man, if I could just talk to that person face to face. 8 times out of 10, maybe 10 out of 10. But listen carefully what I'm going to tell you. 8 times out of 10, maybe more, the God they don't believe in is the same God I don't believe in either. In other words, they just have the wrong view of God. And guess what? That happened to Moses. Moses is going to meet God, and God is going to blow his mind. And so what people are rejecting is they're rejecting the wrong stuff, but by throwing everything out, they're finding themselves completely lost. Okay? When Pharaoh heard this, it says he tried to kill Moses. But Moses fled. Moses fled and went to live in Midian, where he sat down by a well. How do we find our identity? Moses is now, he's running for his life. He doesn't know where to turn. He ends up in the desert. He ends up by a well. And his life starts to take a completely different path, a completely different turn. Now you have to remember, this young man is being groomed to be the Pharaoh. I mean, he's being groomed to be the most powerful person in all of Egypt. And the way things were structured, you could say he was being groomed to be the most powerful person on planet Earth. And there he sits by a well. How do you get to Midian? It's not 4 blocks away. You have to cross the Sinai Peninsula, a barren wilderness desert. And this is the journey. So if I can set this up for the series coming up, I want to talk about what needs to happen to you and to me for us to find ourselves, to find out who we are and what God really actually made us to do. First thing is he goes to the desert. So that's what you and I need. We have to go to the desert. What's in the desert? Why would you go to the desert? Well, the first thing you would do is you go to the desert because you need to be away from where you are, where the chaos and where the confusion is. Moses is in the palace. He's got all of this luxury. He's got the life, but it's gnawing at him. It's eating him inside. He's not content. He sees the wrong that's going on in the world around him, and he wants to act, but his actions are not helpful. He's too young. Anybody ever done more harm than good? He's not ready. He thinks he knows. Anybody remember being young and you thought you knew? He knew, and then, nope. He kills this man. Now he's running for his life. But the beauty of the desert is this. There's no distractions. There's no noise. There's no chaos. You know, one of the reasons that you come here, one of the reasons that you don't even maybe identify it is that you come to get away from the chaos, the noise. You come to hear God. Now, here's the thing that you need to understand. I would love to say that Moses sat down and got a chart and a map, and he said, you know, I need to go meet God. I need to get away in the desert. I need to go have a retreat. We do those kinds of things, right? And they're meaningful, and not exactly how it worked for Moses. Moses was running for his life, afraid for his life. So let's be honest about some of our desert experiences, because the desert isn't nice. There's nothing to eat there. There's nothing to drink. There's nowhere to sit. You ever been in a place where you're just like, I just need a chair? No, have you? Like, you're at an office or something. Can I just sit down for a minute? There's nothing. There's nothing helpful there to your physical. Well, this is going to strip you. It's going to rip everything away from you. How about all of his fancy clothes and his jewelry? You guys have seen the whole Pharaoh garb. How's that working for you in the desert? Right away, you start to realize this is not productive. This is not helpful. This gold I have on me is just making me hot. I'm going to leave this here. You start leaving all this stuff that were the identity, the markings of your greatness. You start throwing them away. The desert strips you of all the old identity. Think about this. You ever been stripped of your identity? Some of you get a little older in life, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. I put all my eggs in this basket. I'm this guy. And then it got stripped away. Moses is, I can only envision him just like, this stuff's not useful anymore. And it seems like what the desert does is it starts to strip away all the unproductive stuff in our life. All the false stuff. I mean, have you ever thought about it? Like if you go into a courtroom and you see a judge, they're just like you and me, except they have a what? Like a robe on. And like something about that, and then they get to sit up above everybody. And those two acts are very deliberate. They're to put them here and you here, right? And I think that has its place and all that. But I also say it's just a robe. That's all. It's just material. But isn't it funny what material does to us? Isn't it funny, like that Moses, all of a sudden, when you start stripping all that away, he just looks like a regular guy. And that's because he is. And that's because you, underneath all that, you're just a regular guy. Moses goes into the desert, not because he wants to. And I think this is important. As good as the desert is, as life-changing as that experience is, he doesn't go there because he wants to. He goes there because he has to. Any addicts or former addicts here? Hello? Am I speaking the language? I don't go there because we want to. We go there because I had to. I can't do this anymore. Or I hit bottom. Now I'm going in the desert. But the desert's going to remake you. The desert is going to fundamentally change you. It's going to take all the stuff away from you, make you desperate, make you alone. Find out who you really are. But you know what really sends us to the desert is our failures. Anybody? It would be great if we were just so wise that we would do certain things for ourselves, but us humans, we're a unique sort, and what we need is a good failure. We need a good problem to get us in the desert, to the place where God can get our attention. And a couple of things happen in the desert. One, you meet God. Where does Jesus go? Right? At the start of his ministry, to meet God, he goes to the desert to be tempted, to be tried, to be tested. This is the beginning of your identity. This is the beginning of, can I say it, your true greatness. Failure, frustration, all of these things lead you to this place, and all the old stuff gets stripped away. The facade. Let me ask you a question about the desert. Does it matter what people think about you out there? No, no one there. How about how your Twitter account is doing? No one cares. There's no one to impress. It's just you and the stars. But Moses here meets God. This is where he meets God. I think two things, perhaps, I don't know exactly everything that happened to Moses in this part of his experience, but in his desert experience, I know for sure that he met God. Exodus 3, let me give you a little bit. Moses was tending the flocks of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, which we'll talk about in a minute. One of the things that happened by the well is that he meets, through the young ladies that are there watching their flock, he meets his bride and his father-in-law. And he led the flock to the far side of the desert, and the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames from within a bush. Moses saw the bush was on fire, but it did not burn up. So Moses thought, I will go over and see this strange sight, why the bush is not burning up. Could I just say that in our everyday life, perhaps we've driven by 20 or 30 burning bushes, but we're so busy, we're so driven, we're so trying to get to our next thing. But if you're in the wilderness and you notice these things. In other words, I think you don't have to be there. God can get your attention anywhere as long as you're paying attention. Now think about this. What's strange about a bush that's on fire? Well, it's on fire. You would notice it. But what's peculiar about this bush, it was on fire, but it wasn't what? Consumed. So, I make bonfires all the time. At the house, you have a little bonfire, and you look at it, and you're like, oh, there's a bunch of limbs burning. What would be the difference? I would have to look at it for, what? A certain period of time to realize, wait a minute, it's burning, but it's not disappearing. In other words, what does that take? Focus. Paying attention. You know, God's always trying to get your attention, but you can decide whether or not you're going to listen. Moses is ready. Some of you can remember your burning bush experience. And it says there, God called to him, Moses, Moses. And Moses says, here I am. He's starting to find his identity. Don't come any closer. Take off your sandals. The place where you're standing is holy ground. Then he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, who are all three perfect men. No. Who all three had perfect religion. No. Do you get what I mean? One of the things that we have done is we've told a generation, throw the whole thing out. All that stuff your parents did, your grandparents did, going to church, that's all nonsense. And now we're all lost and we don't know why. I'm the God of Abraham, Isaac. What does he do? He ties him to this unreal tradition. I know some traditions get out of whack. I am completely aware. I know some traditions we don't fully even understand. I know some traditions in church haven't been well explained to you. Okay, all that's true. But to just unplug, unhinge from everything that's gone before us does not make sense, my friends. I'm the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. He's going to tie you to this rich tradition. Your identity is found connected to your past as well. And he says to Moses, Moses hid his face because he was afraid, and God said, I have seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I've heard them crying out. I've come to rescue them. I've come to rescue them. I've come to rescue them. He starts, Moses, Moses. What does Moses mean? Well, can I paraphrase? Rescued. Remember the baby in the basket? And the mom says, I'm going to call you Moses because I, what? Pulled you out of the water. I rescued you. Rescuer, rescuer. Moses, Moses. Or you could say, saved one, saved one. You ever seen people that were in captivity and they got set free? You've seen them on TV or whatever. They come off these airplanes and they get landed back. They were in captivity, not knowing if they were going to live or die. And they come back, and the first thing they do is they get on it doesn't matter. They get on the tarmac and they do what? They kiss the ground. Because you've been saved. You were going to die and you've been saved. And then you realize that was for a reason. I think one of the things that happened to Moses in the wilderness is he met God and he woke up. And he starts to think back. You know, when he starts to think back, he thinks, I guess my life is a bit of a miracle. I want you to do an exercise. Every single one of you, I want you to do an exercise. I want you to think about the miracle of your life. That's where you begin. Your life is a miracle, that today is a miracle. You, my friend, are a miracle. And if you begin with that sacredness of your life, Moses begins to realize and to meditate on the fact that his existence, he was saved and he was rescued. He's here for a reason. He meets God. Now, this is the part of the story that gets even better because God and Moses, they have like a conversation. And later on, he says to God, well, if I go do this rescuing work, who should I say sent me? Moses was getting over this identity crisis. Look, listen to this, Exodus 3. Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh? I'm nobody. I can't do it. Now we look back and we think, Moses. But when Moses saw himself, he didn't see what you and I see now as this great rescuer. He was insecure. Moses goes on to say, well, what if they don't believe me? What if they don't listen to me? Moses has reason after reason after reason that I'm not adequate. And God has to take Moses through this process so he can realize that he has him there for a reason. Now listen, I want to take you back to the well. Moses goes to the desert, and he ends up by a well. And what happens at the well is there are these ladies that are shepherds, and they get harassed by some other shepherds. And Moses stands up and defends them. Not in his old way where he murders them, but he defends them. He stands up the right way. He has got the right measure now for these young women, and he ends up going to their home, and he ends up marrying one of them, and then he begins his new life. This is his transition. This is for anybody that's been in the desert. But I'll say this one's especially for the young. If you know some young person in the desert, what do? I lost my job, or I'm confused, or I dropped out of college, or I went through a divorce, or whatever. It just puts you in the desert. And you could say, I didn't really sign up for the desert, but nonetheless, I'm here. What do you do when you're lost? Moses ends up at this well, and he starts, ready? Just working. What's the best thing you can do when you're lost and you're confused and you don't know what to do? Should you just sit there forever? No, he defends these girls. And from defending these girls, he ends up going to their house, and going to their house, he realizes they need a little more help, and would you like to be a shepherd? And he grew up. By the way, we can now verify historically how sophisticated the Egyptians were. Anybody ever been to the pyramids? How brilliant. He's educated by these brilliant minds, and he gets to apply it as a shepherd. Anybody here underemployed? No, but we talk about this, right? Oh, Mom, my son, he went to college, and he's this, and he's this, and he's this, and the only thing he can do is lay bricks. And you'd say what? Lay them straight. No, he's just going to sit around for 6 months, and are you sure that's good? You get what I'm saying? Don't think this is not in the story for a reason. Moses he has to leave all of that behind, thinking about what he could have been and what might have been, and he just starts watching sheep. Next time you're lost, you just remind yourself this. I need some R&R. Your young person says to you, Mom, I just need some R&R. And you say, you're darn right you do. You need some routine and responsibility. Yeah, with me? That's what you need. No, it's not small. It's not small because we don't do good. Us humans don't do good sitting there staring at nothing. Because then the next thing we stare at is we stare at a TV screen or a phone, and hours go by, and confusion goes by, and hours we listen to all this nonsense. Hello? How many know the best desert experience for some people would be to lose their cell phone for a long time? Moses spends countless years of his life just following sheep around. I want you to put this together. Put this together. Now, two things have happened that God's going to use in Moses' life. Two things have just happened. One, he's made the route from Egypt all the way through the desert. That's a route he's going to need to, what? Use again. Now he'll be the leader. We just took a trip to Turkey. I took a bunch of our church family. And I'm always more confident on these trips when there's places that I have already, what? Been. And sometimes I have to sit back because so half of this trip that we were on, I had been before, and there were parts of it I had never been. So I have to really step back and let the guide take us. Are you with me? Moses knows this route now. You see, God, listen to me. God doesn't waste this stuff in your life. You know, I make these young people like, yeah, but it's just all waste. It's just a waste. No, it's not a waste. God's showing you the route. I'm going to use this route. You're going to lead countless people. You're going to need to know this route. God doesn't waste our desert. Then you're going to be a shepherd. What a waste. You know, all my friends aren't shepherds. They're like, you know, pyramid builders. But corralling sheep, that's nothing to corralling people. Are you with me? By the way, we were in Turkey, and our tour guide says he's been guiding for 29 years. 29 years. And he gave some parting words to us as we had a final dinner. It was a real nice dinner. And I thought he was going to say something about how beautiful we were, how spiritual, how godly. He said, this is the slowest group I've ever walked with in my life. Over here. You try to get a bunch of people going together? It's a skill. It's a skill because, you know, what happens is Moses has to learn how to do this, but now he's got to do it with people. See, God doesn't waste anything that he's doing in your life. He doesn't waste the desert. It's not gone time. It's practice. It's refining. It's changing you. It's building your skill set. It's all a part of your identity. Nothing's wasted with God. Isn't that good? Who here has ever been through some really difficult years? And what God does is he just takes it all and he fashions it together. It's going to be a part of the identity. I couldn't help it. I was just meditating on it, thinking about this desert thing. And I think that's the problem. I think all of us think, oh, we need some R&R. But we need a different kind of R&R. And so I put two of them down for the desert. You need religion and restriction. Moses had to go meet God. He had to find God. Restriction, I mean, there's nothing. Moses had the finest food. He had the finest of everything. I'm going to close with this verse. Hebrews chapter 11. Now, Hebrews is written, and it gives a perspective on Moses. And it says this, by faith, Moses, when he had grown up, refused to be known as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He walked away from it all. To be known as, identity. Are you with me? He let his old identity go. He let it go. Instead, he chose to be mistreated along with the people of God rather than enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. There it says it. I'll take this path. I'll let all that go. I'll find my true identity. I think a lot of us, we'll close with this, a lot of us have gotten, dressed up in Pharaoh's outfits. You know, we bought it. Yeah, that's what it's about. And then something happens in our life, and I would love to say that we were brilliant and wise and sage enough to go wandering in the desert, but usually we just kind of have to get kicked there. But that's okay. Everybody say, that's okay. Oh, I'm going to get through the desert. God's working on me. He's working through me. He's preparing me. He's not done with me. He's setting me up. Strip away all the old nonsense so you can become the person that God has you. Moses, the rescued one, the rescuer. God rescued you for a reason too. There's a reason and there's a purpose. Let's stand. We'll have a closing prayer.